when you talk about climate justice as well, that specifically relates to the just transition into a renewable economy. And so what that refers to is by making sure that no one gets left behind. Ideally, we should be planning to make that process as smooth as possible and to make sure people are being supported in that transition.
Hey friend, welcome back to Sam and Em Solve the World's Problems.
Sam has a lot of problems.
Emily, please.
Today we're talking to a friend of ours that is really engaged in and passionate about climate justice.
Yeah, she's just finished up a year of being state coordinator of the Australian Youth Climate Coalition, and she's currently studying a double degree in politics and science.
Yeah, we can't wait for you to hear this conversation with the wonderful Claire Rogers.
Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Claire. Welcome to our podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me along.
That's okay. I'm very, very excited about this episode. Yeah, well, we're just going to jump into how we know you and then like what you do with yourself. We met at school, went to school together all those years ago. Sam briefly met Claire while we went to Grooven one time.
Yeah.
Which was super fun. What do you do with yourself?
Well, I guess technically, if I was to say what my profession is, I'd be a student. I'm studying science and politics at UOW in Wollongong.
Oh, nice, easy, light reading.
Yeah.
Yes, lots of that. But I also do a lot of volunteering with an organisation called Australian Youth Climate Coalition and chill out in between.
How did you get started in that?
Well, it's a bit of a funny story, actually. I was at Laneway Festival and I was volunteering there, and I was just like chatting to the chick that I was volunteering with.
She's going to sound like all we ever do is go to festivals during COVID. I'm like...
Yeah, but I made some comment. She had some sticker on her laptop, maybe about like Stop Adani or something, which is a pretty big movement that I'd been following but not really been involved in. And I made a comment about it, and she said that she was actually really heavily involved in AYCC and gave me the contact to the Wollongong grassroots leader. And from there, I reached out to Kate, and she was super inviting and friendly and just invited me along to one of their O-Week stalls to say hey. And from there, I met a bunch of really cool people that were, like fighting for something that I really believed in and that I wanted to join. So that's how I got involved.
Yeah, nice. Have you always been passionate about like climate change and environmental justice? I remember going like op shopping with you when we were young all the time, but I feel like maybe that was more because we didn't have any money and wanted clothes.
Yeah, the alternative to the designer. No, I don't know. I kind of think I've tried to like backtrack when I really became interested in this kind of stuff, and I can't think of like a specific turning point, but I do know that I was always really inclined to helping like the animals and like the environment and stuff like that when I was a kid. And then as I kind of went through school, that turned more into a humanitarian focus. So I originally started out wanting to go to uni to study law and science to kind of bring in that human aspect to it. And yeah, I guess the more I've learned, the more that's kind of evolved, and now I am where I am today.
Nice. Well, the first problem that we want to solve today is why should we even care about climate change and climate justice? And like
that sounds like a pretty loaded question, because obviously I think everyone listening cares about it. Yeah. But I think if we talk about why it is that we care.
Why do we care? Yeah.
No, I think this is like a really important question as well, and we ask it a lot in like the work that I do volunteering, because it's so important to connect to your purpose and like your passion. So it is an important question. But yeah, I guess for me, the reason I care, as I said, it kind of transformed from being like, I want to be able to go and see beautiful bush and like go for bushwalks and see birds singing and nature flourishing, to still having that as like a really important motivation, but then also learning more and more about how much climate change actually affects people and society. And so that goes from myself or people in pretty privileged positions to be living in places that aren't yet feeling the worst of the worst. But we've just seen a summer with devastating bushfires and, floods following, and it's coming ever, ever closer. But for years and years, those effects have been felt by people in less fortunate positions. And that is kind of like the biggest problem, is that those that have contributed the least to the problem, which is climate change, are
feel it the
suffering
most.
the worst. Yeah. And they're suffering first as well. And they're also the least, they put in the position where they have the least capacity to actually mitigate or deal with those problems that arise. And it's that like fundamental injustice that really frustrates me and really motivates me to try correct it in any way that I can.
That's the second time I've heard the word justice come up when referring to climate, which I think normally in conversations around this topic I haven't heard that. So I'm curious about how justice ties into the climate movement more as well. Can you touch more on that?
Yeah. I think that's been a really pivotal shift in the way the narrative has been told within the past decade. It was a big focus on climate action, and you'd always see people, I'm standing up for climate action. Whereas now the movement is a lot more focused on climate justice. And so climate justice, it refers to the fact that, as I said, those that have done the least to cause the problem are having to deal with the worst of it. And they're getting no support from those people that have caused it all and continue to cause it. And by people,
and
I
mean... have the power to change it.
Yeah, exactly. The corporations and people in power involved in the fossil fuel industry that continue to engage in a practice that is known to worsen and amplify the effects of climate change. And so they're not ignorant to the fact that they causing harm to people, but they do so regardless because of the way the system's structured that motivates people through making profit and rather than
Love
exactly
it.
the elephant
we gotta
in
get
the
an economist
room.
on here.
Yeah. So the elephant in the room is capitalism, because that is the fundamental root cause. But and that's the cause of the injustice. So in talking about climate justice, it does tie it to those systems that perpetuate the inequality that exists.
Yeah, I found it really interesting. You told me when we were sort of briefing for this interview, you were talking about how it's become a social issue as well as a climate issue. That inequality has sort of fostered its way into social classes, and it's just become a lot more than a climate issue.
Yeah, and that's kind of always been the case, but I guess the focus is on that a lot more now as people really realize the brunt of it. Fossil fuel industries for years and years have been displacing people of lower socioeconomic class or of indigenous communities from their country for the sake of exploiting the environment for fossil fuels. And that's been going since the industry really begun. But now the effects are really, really visible and really clear.
It's funny, privilege is making its way, like the topic of privilege is making its way through so many more, topics of conversation recently, not just on our podcast, but like it's interesting to me that it's coming up even now with climate action and justice. I think, as an Australian who lived through the last few disasters that came quite close to our front doors, I think.
The bushfires.
Yeah, the bushfires, and then obviously the flooding that accompanied directly afterwards. It was very eye-opening for us. And I think that kind of ties into what's kind of my next question is why should we care now? I mean, that opened my eyes significantly. I mean, and I've always cared a lot about the climate, but I've never acted on it. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like the urgency has never been more obvious, right? Like the fact that we were indoors all summer or fighting for your home is just really goes to show like that it is coming right here on our doorsteps, and no one is untouchable, which is, it's pretty scary to think about, but it is a bit of a call to action, and it kind of shows that there is no time to waste. This is the time to act, because if we don't, these things are going to be happening more and more often at greater severities, and that's been shown scientifically. So
this would seem like the perfect time to ask how, but we're going to get to that.
Yeah. We have a listener question to ask you. What do you say to people who are convinced that climate change is not a thing? Like, how do you even begin to try to convince someone that, you know, it is such an urgent problem, but there's so many people who just don't care, or if they do realize that it's a thing, they don't want to do anything about it.
Yeah. I think there's a pretty important distinction to make there. So if I'm talking to someone who has no interest in changing their mind, is completely convinced that it doesn't even exist, in that situation, I might try personalize, you know, like this big massive thing that's climate change that seems so abstract, try bring it back home to them in a way that they might be able to relate and actually see it and observe it in their own lives. However, if they're completely putting up a wall to anything I say, then that's not something to put your energy into, because that's going to be more draining for you, and it just reignites their fire of denial. So it's going to be more worth your while to like focus on people that are actually going to be open to listening, and those people are, you know, the ones that acknowledge that it is a thing, but might be apathetic to it. And with those kind of people, that kind of tactic, I guess, of bringing it back home would be a lot more effective, like kind of showing them how it does affect them, how if they don't see it right now, it affects their family, it affects things that they care about, like things that they're hoping for in their future. And kind of, I guess people tend to be a lot more responsive when they see how they're being personally affected. And then from there, you can kind of try open their mind up to recognizing how it's also affecting other people disproportionately as well.
I actually prefer, I think, the later tact of telling how it affects other people, because I think that if they're not willing to listen from the get-go, they clearly can't perceive how it's impacting them at the moment. Does that make sense?
It does.
If I can't see, and I think as well, I want to talk about the last election cycle, because that's when climate was last at the forefront, at least of my mind, and in the media. It seemed to be a huge topic then, and it was definitely one of my main deciding factors in who I wanted to vote for at the time. I think what I've learned since then, the election result shocked me a lot, and I think it shocked a lot of people who were heavily invested at the time. And it took me a really long time to process how someone could see the other way. And one part of that was my recommendation from last week, reading Yang's book and seeing what does affect other people, like in completely different communities. I was completely blinded from that. But if you're, for example, like I never have to worry about paying bills. If you have to worry about paying bills, in the forefront of your mind is not what's going to happen in 10 years. It's what's happening right now. Like, and I don't know, how do you get people like that to see that this is an issue? It's just hard. And
and I think that ties into like, I've said before, I don't have enough money to be like, not to care about climate change, but I don't have the money to invest in like not fast fashion and spend good money on good quality clothes, or I don't have the money to go and buy like farmers' produce and stuff like that. And I think it ties into that kind of mentality of like, if you're struggling, how can you, we've kind of shifted into that second question, but how can you like...
Yeah, maybe we should get right into it and we'll touch more on this. Oh my God, shut up. Am I right?
Oh my God, I know. Those two never stop talking.
Far out. Anyway, today's episode is brought to you by us.
Yay! If you like the podcast and you want to support us, the best ways to do that are to find us on the different podcasting platforms, subscribe, and leave us very nice reviews. 5 stars would be great. But also to screenshot where you're listening to us. So take a screenshot of the actual podcast when you're listening and upload that to your Instagram story and tag us. That gets word of mouth across and you get to share it with all your friends. So it's really helpful for us.
Okay, yeah, we're getting the wrap-up signal. We're going to have to wrap it up. We'll go back to the super amazing content brought to you by Sam and M. Have problems. Wait, no, not have problems. Damn it. Should have left it to the pros.
Yeah, okay, moving on to our second problem. What can we do? Where do we even start? If you're someone who's just randomly never heard of climate change before and today listening to this episode, it's the first time you've ever heard about it, what can we do?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, that there is a lot more that you can do than you think. And I know when I was at school, I got really overwhelmed with that same question before I kind of reached out and actively tried to look for the different ways that I could get involved and learn more. And it's going to be different for everyone because everyone has different capacities. And also, you know, in kind of taking that next step and actually acting on those feelings of like uncertainty and anxiety, I think it's important to find what you actually find enjoyable in doing, because taking action is kind of like an antidote to those feelings, right? And so you want it to be something that works for you. And so for me, that was volunteering with a group of people that are similarly concerned and passionate about doing something. And it's like forming those relationships with people that are fighting for a similar thing to you. And through that, you kind of have a support system as well. And it also gave me opportunity to learn heaps more because you're constantly in connection with other people that are interested in this stuff and can share resources and stuff like that. And so that's easier said than done. For me, it was really useful having AYCC as a club at my uni. And we were able to meet regularly and have, you know, group chats where everyone's always sharing resources and things like that. But that's not necessarily going to be the case for everyone. But the good thing, one of the positive things to come out of this corona crisis is that a lot of those spaces have been made available online, and which makes it more accessible for everyone, no matter where you are, as long as you hopefully have connection to internet. And that means that you can join from wherever your space is. You don't necessarily have to be at a university or anything like that. And it's not just AYCC that's offering those kind of spaces. It's like a number of different organizations that all kind of approach the issue from different angles. So yeah, it really takes like kind of looking into those organizations that might be like AYCC or Greenpeace or Extinction Rebellion, you know, those kind of big names.
Yeah, what was your role at the AYCC again for the listeners?
Yeah, so I started out just as your regular volunteer with the Wollongong grassroots group because they have kind of grassroots hubs all over the country. And then after about a year, I stepped up to be a grassroots leader, and from there stepped up as state coordinator. So yeah, that's what I've just kind of finished up a year of doing. But yeah, so like those kind of steps didn't come straight away. I went in with not a lot of knowledge. I hadn't heard about climate justice as opposed to climate action. I didn't know where to look for resources. I didn't have any idea about campaigning or organizing. And those are all things that I've learned along the way. And it's kind of a bit of a snowball effect. So once you go along to one thing, you're exposed to instantly so many more avenues that you can take, and it becomes easier and easier, and you grow in confidence. And you also, it's really inspiring by being surrounded by other people that are similarly on that journey of kind of taking their own routes of action. And you
I'm
work
interested
out,
to know is what kind of things are you doing in each role? Like you say, you're like organizing and volunteering, what kind of activities does that? I literally know nothing about kind of what you do. Is it mostly like protesting or?
Also, we'll have all those organizations that Claire mentioned in the show notes if you're interested in looking at them.
Yeah. So, in what I've learned a lot through volunteering with AYCC is how social movements work. And so there's kind of like some mechanics involved in that. And that might be how to plan actions that draw attention and then absorb that intention in a meaningful way.
Okay. How did the organization be responding during the pandemic? Is that like a tough issue for you guys at the moment?
It was, it's definitely been something that's completely new and different for social movements all over the world. Like we've seen similarly with like Black Lives Matter, they've had to really play off kind of trigger events that have happened in really dynamic ways. And it has been hard because, typically when you're planning kind of public facing actions, it would be somewhere in person with a crowd, which is, not possible at the moment. So there's been a lot more focus on how we can draw that attention and kind of absorb it in a meaningful way through online spaces. So at the moment,
I'm stuck. What would the like the most successful version of a certain issue within climate look like? Would it be like a protest would draw attention to that issue and then policymakers would then implement something around that issue, or what's the end goal?
It could be that you might have seen like a few times a lot of petitions have gone around to kind of save maybe a patch of land from being deforested. And from there, the constructions had to be put on hold because it's had to go under review. And there's been enough public backlash that they've decided to cancel that. Like, for example, Equinor down in South Australia, who is planning a whole lot of oil exploration and drilling. The amount of public backlash that they got for that really drove those projects away. So that's like a tangible way of it making a difference. But it also, those kind of events tend to attract, as Emily was saying, like the normal everyday person who might not have otherwise had any experience in doing those kind of things, because they're able to see it happening and see it as something inviting, as a way to, take action on the things that they've learned about these issues. And so, as well as being there to create change, they're also actions that draw people into the movement and grow your supporter base, so that you're shifting the power in the direction that you want to see the change happen.
Yeah. I mean, this conversation is like the first time I've actually heard someone who is directly involved in like, a program like the AYCC or something like that. Like whenever I hear of someone who cares about climate change or the environment, the way that you hear of them acting is by reducing their fast fashion or not using plastic or all those kinds of things.
And I really wanted to hear about that. Is that even like, what's the point?
Yeah. We wanted to ask, is there a point in that kind of thing? In that kind of way, can an individual make any kind of difference at all?
Yeah, I think
also, is it worth the guilt? Like, I feel like individuals are guilted into doing the smallest things. Yeah, are we doing anything at all? Is it?
Yeah, I think there's a few things to say on that. So, first of all, everyone and lots of different organizations as well as individuals have different approaches to creating change, and those are kind of theorized as theories of change. So, what you're talking about there with your kind of lifestyle choices, that would be a very like individualist focused theory of change. So it's where you believe that individuals have the power to make changes in their own lives that will ripple out into a larger change. And I think that is a very valid way of creating change. Like when you think of it logically, if everyone, stop using
every
plastic,
individual
plastic would be redundant. But it also doesn't take consideration of the fact that not everybody is in the position to do that. So, you know, I might, when I find myself in the financial position to do so, I might shop purely at like Whole Food, bulk kind of buying places. But a lot of the time as a student, I'm not in that position. So I have to go, you know, to your typical Woolworths or whatever and buy things that are inevitably going to be wrapped in plastic. And I shouldn't feel guilty for that because it's not something that I'm choosing to do. It's something that's kind of forced upon you. And that's just the way that the system is structured, unfortunately. So yeah, so I think those kind of things, it is a valid way of creating change. However, it needs to be coupled by systemic change, which makes those kind of choices available to everybody, regardless of your financial position or your locality.
Right. So what I understand now is like individual change, still good, but probably not going to do a lot.
Well, because there's also the argument that like of all the horrible things that we're doing to the environment, corporations take up like what 50% of that, right? So if we can,
is it 50?
I don't know what the stat is.
Is it like 90?
Yeah.
Like
it's a lot of it, right?
It's definitely more like 90. There's like 100 companies in the world that contribute to something like, this isn't the exact stats, but like 90% of
maybe we
emissions.
can link some sources.
Yeah. There'd definitely be some. But yeah, no, that's so true. And it does, when you think about it, when you get stuck in that thought, it can be really disheartening. But the way I see it is that I do what I can in my position to reduce my personal impact, but I couple that by trying to, fight those injustices where corporations are really causing the mass of it, and trying to draw attention to that fact and change that at a systematic level so that hopefully in the future we'd be able to get to a situation where it's not like that. It doesn't have to be like that anymore.
Yeah.
So I feel like we can't talk, it's like almost impossible to talk about climate without talking about politics.
Yeah.
And I feel like that ties into the degree you're studying and why you're so passionate about that. But I was going to move on to the point of how does it make you feel when you hear about, like, I feel like the way that climate is always talked about in the media is jobs versus climate. Like it's always versus jobs. I'm like, how is it versus jobs? Like, how do you feel about that argument?
Yeah.
Or how that's portrayed?
I think that was one of the biggest factors that contributed to the loss of the last federal election, was that narrative was spun by those in positions of power that benefit from the fossil fuel industry.
Little did they know everyone would lose their jobs anyway.
Yeah, because when you look deeper into it, those industries are becoming more and more automated. So the initial jobs that are created out of the construction are lost within a number of years, if that.
That's what I was thinking as well. Like, how many people work at mines these days? Isn't it mostly machines? Like, that's what I'm thinking when they frame an argument like that. I'm like, sure. I know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know there are a lot of jobs involved.
My dad is currently, the only work he's getting is on a mine. But
yeah, there's a lot of people that depend on it. And that's why when you talk about climate justice as well, that specifically relates to the just transition into a renewable economy. And so what that refers to is by making sure that no one gets left behind in the closing down of fossil fuel industry infrastructure, and ensuring that there is support mechanisms in place for those people that will be, inevitably they will be displaced, whether that happens now or another few years down the track when we're in a worse off position. But ideally, we should be planning to make that process as smooth as possible and to make sure people are being supported in that transition. and getting like the retraining and the benefits to ensure that they're not going to be put in a worse off position than they would otherwise be.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I totally think that whole jobs versus climate narrative has been completely spun out of proportion for the sake of aggravating people. And it's really playing into that insecurity that people have about, their financial position and where they sit in that transition. And so it's kind of been put there as like a little weed to kind of put a spanner in the works, and just as like a distraction that really draws away from something that could be a really positive process.
I was going to say, because and when you look at it, always seems to come down to me to short term versus long term. Like, it's so hard to look at any topic around climate without looking at the time scale of it, because you look at there's so many reports that I've seen, or probably, to be honest, a lot of headlines. I have read some articles though with reporting about the long-term economic impacts of climate change being in the trillions of dollars, affecting worldwide economies. But we're focusing on this quarter or this year about how these are some of my frustrations. I'm like, ugh, but then
it's also like, I can completely say that the only thing I cared about in the last election was climate change. That was, I 100%, I was like, if I never own a house, I don't care, because what's the point in owning a house if there's no land to own a house on, Like, I voted completely for the long-term aspect of the election. That's just so frustrating that we're stuck in the short term.
And I think that, that comes down to the way our system works, that it is a short-term frame.
I think it's also based on our privilege.
Yeah, that's true.
We are we're economically, secure.
Yeah.
So we're able to then go, okay, what does affect me? It's all these.
That's
climate
true.
change was one of the biggest issues impacting me personally.
And maybe that's why I feel like Gen Z right now is doing an excellent job of just keep pushing. But, on being the higher spectrum of the Gen Z age, I still live at home, and all of the ones who come before me, they're in school. They're not thinking about the short-term economic impacts that are going to affect them, potentially if they were living out of home, had a family, all that kind of stuff. So maybe that also has something to do with.
I think that's also very linked in terms of if we're thinking about people's financial stability as well as, their long-term environmental situation. I think that it's the same problems that are continuing the causing or exacerbating climate change are also those that are exacerbating economic inequality. So it comes down to or recognizing that it is really intersectional. This is a really intersectional issue, and by addressing, you can't address one without addressing the other, kind of thing.
Definitely.
So at the end of the day, the biggest way to impact climate change is what? Vote?
Yeah, well, that's in a democratic system, that should be it. But I also think beyond that, kind of helping to change the culture and change the general attitude towards it. And so trying to encourage people not to get stuck in that apathy, and inspire those around you to work with you toward making widespread change. Yeah, because inevitably, at the end of the day, our government is so tied up with those industries that are exacerbating climate change that they are not acting in our best interest. And while our vote is powerful, we need to also be working as best we can to create that change and bring the power back to us.
Yeah.
Can I ask you one question as well? Do you have anything that you're most proud of in that you've accomplished quite a lot, like being the state coordinator of the Australian Youth Climate Coalition? That's very impressive. Well, it sounds impressive to me. And what are you most proud of achieving in I guess climate action or climate justice? It's a big question,
you
I know.
make it sound so fancy.
It sounds really fancy.
I think, I don't know, I think I wouldn't pinpoint one big event or achievement, but I think over the past 4 years or so that I have been really actively trying to be involved, I've learned so much, and that learning has come step by step. It hasn't been one huge revelation. It's been really incremental. And so when I look at myself and what I know now compared to what I knew when I started, yeah, I'm pretty proud. Like I've learned a lot, and I've gotten to do a lot of things because of those learnings and because because of the people that I've been fortunate enough to work with. But that is a process that's occurred over a number of years, and it's been step by step, and it's not something that's, takes some superhero ability to do. Like, it is very doable for everyone, I think.
Yeah, I don't want you to discredit yourself, though, because not everyone is going to be as passionate to achieve what you have. So
I actually wanted to, I don't know if you have any more, but I wanted to touch on that as my final question and sort of say, like, you mentioned before how you want to you want to do things within, the climate change activism kind of world that are actually going to make your anxiety settle and going to make you feel better and going to sort of make you feel like you're participating and making a difference. Do you have any like suggestions of ways people can get involved or activities that people can do that they may not have heard of, or if someone's not in this world and doesn't think about climate change very often, but now maybe wants to, or even just me, I think about climate change all the time, but I have no idea how to settle this climate anxiety. Like, what would you sort of recommend to them?
I feel like something you do as well, like you were talking about like the way that you eat, you made decisions in the past about wanting to be more sustainable that way. Yeah.
But maybe someone listening to the conversation is going, oh, okay, well, Claire's saying like I have to volunteer, so I can't volunteer, just different ways. Maybe it's eating, maybe it's the way that you shop, maybe it's volunteering, and just what your recommendation would be, or just random different things people can do.
Yeah. I think to start off with, I think it's like really important to acknowledge those feelings and to allow yourself to sit with them, because as I was kind of saying before, I think that kind of reaction of not caring or complete denial or being angry kind of comes from not having processed those feelings, and it's kind of like an immediate defense. So the first thing, I guess, like the first little step is just like really recognizing that is something that you're feeling. It is something that's shared. There's so many people all around the world that are feeling this. It's a very real concern, and not pushing that away. And then, from there, I think you're in a much better and more stable position to be able to look at what's going to be the best way for you to act on that in a way that's meaningful and that's inspiring for yourself. And that might be joining an AYCC induction or induction call where they'll link you up with a local grassroots group, or refer you to a training that you might feel that will give you skills to be able to start your own group, or join a digital action, or there's so many avenues. Or it might be something like changing your diet, and that's something that you can that's really, I guess, you can really actively do in your own life. Or it might be just exploring more reading on the subject and reaching out to other people and having discussion spaces like this one. I think we get overwhelmed when we can't see an obvious route to take. And sometimes that's a good thing, because there are so many options and you can really tailor it to how it's going to be the most energizing for you. Because that's, when we're talking about like growing the climate justice movement, we want to do so in a way that's that's energizing for people, so that people aren't feeling that burnout from climate anxiety and feeling like they need to do everything all at once, because realistically, we are only human. You need to take a break sometimes. So also recognizing when you do need to take that time to have some space to just sit in those feelings.
Cool. Yeah. Is there anything people can do who aren't even that particularly passionate about it? Like even if it's not at the forefront of someone's mind, is there anything that indirectly is, like, I'm thinking like highest, like the quickest wins, I guess. Like, like, I mean, in a business meeting or something, or like, what are the actions we can immediately take? Like if
you're feeling really inspired after this episode, even like in the next 5 minutes, what can you do?
Yeah. Like I don't know. Just really, really easy, quick wins.
Well, I guess you could always do things like sign pledges, sign surveys, or fill out surveys. For instance, the current campaign that AYCC is working on, which is to get Origin Energy to stop fracking for gas in the Northern Territory. They currently have a survey out at the moment which asks any customer or potential customer to just fill out a few questions that will serve as anonymous data to present to Origin and show them that their retail base, their primary source of financial income, being their customers, doesn't want them to be engaging in any new fossil fuel projects. And that's just one way that you can join the collective action. And those those things have worked in the past to get mines like Adani completely stumped to the point where they're really just barely crawling. And so many other success stories where people have just done something so small as like filled out a survey or filled out a pledge, and it's had a really drastic impact.
Great.
I can share the survey with you.
Yeah, we'll have that survey linked as one of the first things in our show notes if you, in your next 5 minutes, want to go and fill it in. Okay, we're supposed to have another segment now, but I did not brief you on it at all because I forgot about it. Basically, what we do now is ask you if you have any problems that you want us to solve, which can be as interesting or as benign as you'd like. Benign is not the word I should have used there.
I feel like it works. No, benign works.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you've got anything from like, my housemate and I are arguing about chocolate versus vanilla. We always come back to chocolate versus vanilla because we disagree on that.
Because you're wrong about it.
But yeah, if you have any sort of problem you want us to solve.
I've got one because it's a very present concern in my life.
Okay.
My rabbit keeps peeing on my bed. And it's a problem because I really like, he'll like come up and snuggle me at night. Like, he's really cute to have around. So I don't want to lock him out, but I also don't want to run the risk of having a rabbit piss on my bed.
Well, you come to the right place because we're professional rabbit trainers. I don't know if anyone knew about this before. No,
I have nothing for this. This is
surely.
It's an impossible task.
Do you have it? Like,
I've just moved house and I've moved into. I have neighbors, which I've never had neighbors before in any house I've lived in. This is like my 5th house. I've never had neighbors before, and my dogs can't handle that, and they are barking pretty much all the time at my new neighbors. So I'm in a similar position of like, how do I stop my dog from barking without like keeping it inside all day?
Can you even toilet train a rabbit?
I don't know.
He is toilet trained. He just gets lazy when he's in bed.
Can you like...
What's your rabbit's name?
Humphrey.
All right. Damn it, Humphrey.
Yeah. Maybe that will be the catchphrase.
I mean, I'm just thinking of like treat training because that's what I'm doing with my dogs at the moment. Can you like, try to treat train him to go back to wherever he's supposed to pee? Like, every like once a night or something, and reinforce that. Maybe he's just forgotten. I don't know.
Have a set time.
Otherwise, my thought was like, can you have a designated rabbit like
bunny
pee area on your bed? As in like put like a bucket down or something. I don't know.
That would be the worst case scenario.
True. I mean, it's not ideal at all.
Doesn't it stank? Like, I'm not having that.
This question was so I did not expect it. I don't know what to say.
No. if I feel like if it was my bed, like I would love a bunny cuddle like anyone else, but it's to the cage. Like I would see you later. You're
Lock
not.
him out.
I'm not cleaning my sheets every day.
Yeah, well, that's the avenue I'm currently taking. So
I
not
hate
caged,
making my
but
bed.
He's outside my room.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Thanks for the insight.
Maybe treat train if that will work.
No worries. You're welcome that we solved that problem for you.
And solved. Well, we like to finish off the episodes with a recommendation from each of us of just something that's like getting us through life or that we're enjoying or that, a life hack or something. Sam, did you come prepared for this?
You know what? It's going to surprise you, but I didn't. No, I never come prepared for this. No,
fun.
I've been really enjoying an album this week that I'm going to share. I don't know that everyone's going to love this.
You should just give music recommendations every week because that's your entire life. It's just giving us music recommendations.
I was honestly thinking about the recommendation earlier today. I am a new person.
Okay, but also for as much as I give you crap for it, I don't have a recommendation.
Well, look at this. Who's panic ordering now? I am going to recommend the album Bronson by Bronson. It's a self-titled album. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Odessa. So it's Odessa and Golden Features have teamed up. I think it's Golden Features. I'm just now realizing I don't know if that's the case. I'm pretty sure it's those two. Anyway, it's like an electronica kind of album that I've really been enjoying, like listening to while I work, because there's no lyrics, so it doesn't distract me. But it's also, it feels kind of badass.
Nice.
It's a good, like on the treadmill kind of, I'm like, it's like
pumping away.
Yeah.
I'm doing a running action for the listeners. Claire, do you have a recommendation?
I'd recommend my immunity tea that I've been making.
Oh, yes, nice.
Grated ginger, turmeric, a little bit of cinnamon, some apple cider vinegar, and garlic and honey.
You get a recipe for us to put in the show notes because that actually sounds great, except for the ginger bit.
I love ginger.
I do not
like
ginger.
The best. I was like, man, I have that just for the ginger.
Garlic bit, not the ginger bit.
Yeah. But also I know that there are garlic tablets, so I know how good that is for you.
Garlic
Is it taste nice?
Yeah, it tastes good. I mean, I've grown really accustomed to it, but you can add as much or as little honey as you'd like to
Lots of honey then. Copy that.
Alrighty, Em.
My recommendation, I've been stewing on it, is a salt lamp.
Oh.
I have no idea if they have any sort of benefit for you, but they are cute as hell. And they really get an ambience going in your room when you're going to sleep. So maybe they have benefits. I'm sure they probably do. I don't know why they'd exist otherwise.
Moisture from the air. That's what they do.
But it's damn cute. Target sells them for $20. I'm here for it.
I'm pretty sure my parents have had a salt lamp since we went to Jenolan Caves when I was like 8 years old.
Did they light it? I just bought one.
No, it's still on. It's been on this entire time since I've been 8.
Oh, like it's been, right, I get it.
Like it's literally been turned on for that long.
Wow. You renovated your house in that time.
Been on the whole time.
Yeah, nice. I've been
salt lamp, huh?
Yeah. I'm sure there'll be more like room decoration things going on. I'm trying to figure out my room now.
Did you lick it?
What?
Did you lick the salt lamp?
I was very confused by that question. Almost, but then I didn't. I touched it and then I thought I'd lick my finger and then I didn't because COVID.
I swear if I had one of my own, I would like lick it.
I'm tempted to know whether it's actual salt though.
It is.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. I think I have to lick it to prove it.
That's why I'd be like, is it still salt? Anyway.
Because it stopped being salt? Anyway, it's gotten off the rails. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with us, Claire. I really have learned so much in this conversation, much more than I even thought that I would.
Yeah, you really are very inspiring to talk to as well, being, I can't believe, state coordinator of like a... Yeah, it's just phenomenal.
I mean, you're only a month younger than me, right? 21?
Yeah.
It's doable, people.
I just assume everyone's the same age as me and I'm old.
Yes. You 25-year-old, you stay back.
I'm more older than you guys.
Millennial.
Anyway. Yeah. Oh my God.
That's still time.
Yeah. But thank you so much. I have loved this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave us a really nice review, follow us on Instagram at SamandEmHaveProblems, screenshot when you listen to us and post it on Instagram and tag us. Also, you can support us on Patreon if you so desire.
Absolutely. Send us a DM about anything in general, any problems you want us to solve. And music is by The Vinyl Press, and you can find them at The Vinyl Press on Instagram as well.
Yay, thank you so much.